What if the discomfort you're feeling right now isn't proof you're lost, but confirmation you're exactly where you're meant to be? What if the sense of not fitting in, of being emotionally out of sync with your job, your relationships, even your own thoughts, isn't confusion at all, but the clearest signal that you've outgrown your current reality? You're not broken. You're not failing. You're standing in the in-between, the invisible space between chapters. And though it feels unbearable, that very space carries the energy of a quantum leap. Every transformation reaches a moment where nothing makes sense. The passions that once drove you fade to silence. The conversations that once mattered feel shallow. The old ambitions no longer spark fire. It's as if you're watching your life from a distance, not fully in it, not yet free of it. And the mind panics. It wants clarity, movement, evidence that you're progressing. But what it doesn't understand is this: the silence, the unraveling, the emptiness. That is progress. That is the dismantling of an outdated identity, clearing the way for the self you were always meant to step into. If this message already resonates in your field, subscribe, like this video, and comment. My timeline is activated below. Stay with me, because by the end of this transmission, you will understand why your old timelines had to dissolve, and why what comes next will be undeniable. Number 1. The vanishing signs. The first sign of a shift often comes not with noise but with silence. The repeating numbers, the dreams of prophecy, the perfect synchronicities seem to vanish, leaving you wondering if the field has forgotten you. But the truth is more mysterious. The fading of signs is the collapse of echoes, old signals no longer required. Like a radio tuning from static into a clearer frequency, the silence is proof that a higher alignment is taking shape. This moment is not abandonment, but recalibration, the dissolving of timelines that no longer serve your next self. Comment, I align with the shift, if you've ever felt this vanishing as preparation, not punishment. And keep listening, because when signs fade, interference often rises. And that is where the field begins to test your coherence. A dream lingers in your memory, faint but charged, where a clock froze mid-tick and the world around you dissolved into silence. You woke with the sensation that something had been removed, not violently, but with surgical precision, leaving a quiet that was both unsettling and strangely holy. That dream was not random. It was your first glimpse behind the veil, a signal collapsing into your awareness. What you thought was emptiness was the first whisper of alignment, the field erasing old codes that no longer held meaning. The absence you feared was proof that the next chapter was already forming, hidden just beyond sight. Silence did not arrive to wound you, but to open a door into deeper perception. And as you stood in that stillness, a new truth was waiting to be recognized. You remember seasons of your life where your sensitivity made no sense to you, moments when a room felt too heavy, or a conversation drained your spirit before it even began. Friends brushed it off as overthinking, but your body carried the static of signals others could not feel. Sometimes you wondered if you were broken for noticing too much, for hearing the undertones of silence that others seemed to miss. You felt out of place when familiar routines suddenly turned hollow, as if your soul had already outgrown what your body was still living. It wasn't confusion. It was resonance shifting before your mind could explain it. That strange sensitivity was never weakness, it was calibration, your nervous system detecting frequencies in advance. And though you questioned it, the truth is your field was already preparing you for a collapse of old timelines. Every pattern you thought was random was actually part of an unseen architecture designed to hold your path. The moments of rejection that stung like failure were coded to redirect you into resonance. The cycles of silence were not absence but pauses, allowing your field to stabilize before the next alignment. Like particles in superposition, your life was hovering between probabilities, waiting for coherence to collapse one into form. What you saw as randomness was a holographic map, guiding you across dimensions. Mystics once called it the Emerald Code. Scientists now call it morphic resonance, but you felt it as the invisible scaffolding holding your destiny. Nothing was ever wasted. Every detour was calibration written in the language of the field, and the vanishing signs were simply proof that the old scaffolding had been dismantled. Think back to the subtle breadcrumbs you've noticed. A phrase overheard that struck you like prophecy. A déjà vu so sharp it froze you mid-step. a dream that replayed like a memory from another life. These were not accidents but threads of coherence left behind by your higher self. Each one was a reminder that you were never lost, only being rerouted into alignment. Even the physical sensations, the chills, the sudden rush of heat, the pressure in your chest when truth approached, were signals written directly into your body's antenna. The field was not silent. It was speaking in a language beyond proof, leaving markers for the part of you that always remembered. And now those breadcrumbs line up, revealing not confusion but confirmation. For so long you doubted yourself, thinking perhaps you imagined it all, that the subtle knowing was wishful thinking. But intuition is not illusion, it is coherence waiting to be recognized. The vanishing of signs is not proof that you've been forgotten, but that you've stepped beyond the need for constant reminders. Alignment unfolds not with fireworks but with steady frequency, a quiet anchoring of your vibration into the field. Reality is beginning to synchronize with what you've always carried inside, and that synchronization is why the noise has faded. You are not abandoned, you are stabilizing. And in this stabilization, your intuition finally feels like home. The field is not withholding from you. It is inviting you to trust that your knowing was always real. What awakens now is not a new self, but the remembrance of a parallel self that has always been alive in the field. This vanishing of signs is the thinning of the veil, making space for that identity to emerge. You are not becoming something new. You are collapsing into who you already were across timelines. The déjà vu is not memory or imagination. It is entanglement, your consciousness brushing against the life already unfolding for you. This parallel self does not ask you to chase signs, but to embody resonance so fully that the field must respond. In this remembrance, you realize you were never waiting for permission. You were waiting for coherence. And now that coherence is awakening, undeniable and precise. This sensitivity, once misread as weakness, is the very proof of your calibration. The body that shook in silence was simply rehearsing for the frequency it would one day hold with ease. The heart that longed for evidence was learning to radiate coherence without it. Every moment of doubt was a tuning fork, shaping you into someone who could stand steady even when the field withdrew its signs. You were never fragile, you were refining. This calibration is the initiation, the process by which the noise dissolves and the signal strengthens. What looked like loss was the stripping away of interference. And what remains is your ability to hold coherence as the foundation of your being. Your arrival to this message is not coincidence. It is proof that the silence was never emptiness but compression before breakthrough. The field guided you here because your awareness is ready to collapse the old story and step into resonance. You are not hearing this by accident. You are here because your parallel self arranged it across timelines. Comment, I collapse timelines now. If you feel the truth stirring in your body as you hear these words, share your reflection, your memory, or your dream, because your story is a fragment of the collective code. And hold steady, because what comes next will reveal why resistance often rises in the silence, and why that resistance is the clearest proof that you are already shifting. Number 2, the interference field. As silence deepens, resistance appears. You may feel sabotaged, misunderstood, or pressed under invisible weight, but this is not failure. It is the proof that your frequency has shifted high enough to destabilize the old field. In physics, interference patterns show up when waves collide, creating distortion before coherence stabilizes. Your life mirrors the same. Obstacles, confusion, and even subtle sabotage are simply interference patterns breaking apart old coherence. The field is asking if you will hold your vibration when everything seems misaligned. Comment, I walk in coherence, if you've recognized that resistance is confirmation, not condemnation. Because what comes next is where your own body reveals itself as the antenna of your future self. There are moments when you sense a strange distortion, as if the world around you has slipped half a step out of rhythm. Conversations falter for no reason, plans dissolve without explanation, and even your own thoughts seem interrupted by static you cannot locate. This is not ordinary confusion. It is a glitch in the field, the sign that frequencies are colliding beneath the surface of your awareness. What once flowed with ease suddenly feels heavy, like walking through air that has thickened into water. You notice that familiar places no longer welcome you, and relationships that once felt natural begin to resist your presence. The unsettling truth is that your vibration has moved, and the old coherence can no longer contain it. What you are feeling is interference surfacing, a distortion that reveals your shift has already begun. The weight of this interference does not remain abstract. It presses into your emotions with sharp edges. You feel misunderstood even in the company of those closest to you, as if your voice now carries tones others cannot hear. Shame sometimes sneaks in when people dismiss your sensitivity, leaving you questioning whether you are overreacting or broken. Cycles of self-doubt loop in your mind like echoes, convincing you for a moment that you should shrink back into silence. Rejection stings more deeply because your system is already under pressure, amplifying even small dismissals into heavy signals. Yet this pressure is not punishment. It is evidence that your frequency has risen beyond the tolerance of those who remain anchored in the old field. What feels like isolation is, in truth, a boundary forming around the new vibration you are learning to hold. And though it hurts, this pain is the texture of your transformation. The deeper you look, the clearer it becomes that this resistance is not random. Hidden systems, social, familial, or energetic, react instinctively when one presence begins to destabilize the pattern. Ancient stories call it exile, the wilderness where the chosen are tested before their emergence. Physics names it interference patterns, where colliding waves create distortion before settling into a higher order. You are living in that collapse point, the moment where your field collides with everything invested in keeping you small. This is why sabotage sometimes arrives not from enemies, but from those you love, not because they are evil, but because your rising frequency exposes their static. To carry higher potential is to stir sleeping entanglements, and they do not release easily. The struggle you feel is sacred because it proves the shift is already destabilizing the old coherence. Look back carefully, and you will see the patterns you once missed. Every time you prepared to step into alignment, some strange obstacle arose, often so subtle you doubted its significance. Technology failed, delays multiplied, draining people reappeared, and the environments you trusted began to exhaust you. At the time, you may have dismissed these as bad luck or poor planning. But now you can see they were recurring codes, resistance woven into your path like knots in a rope, forcing you to pause and feel your strength. It is like turning on a light in a room that always flickered, unsettling at first, but clarifying once your eyes adjust. The field was never against you. It was testing whether your frequency could remain stable when faced with distortion. And every obstacle was proof that you were nearing coherence. The interference is not only external, it vibrates as static in your own mind. Some days you feel fogged, unable to focus, as though your thoughts are intercepted before they arrive. Other times you sense watchers, not physical but subtle presences, waiting to see if you will collapse back into your old identity. The gates of the quantum field seem closed, and silence feels heavy, almost punishing. This is the effect of decoherence. When rising frequency collides with old vibrational memory, creating distortion until alignment stabilizes. You are not imagining the sabotage. You are perceiving the interference patterns of waves colliding within and around you. What makes this moment powerful is that interference appears only when coherence is near. Static proves signal, distortion proves transmission, and resistance proves the new frequency is already alive. Your response to this interference has been complex. Some days you withdraw, shrinking your light so that no one notices you, hoping the pressure will fade. Other days you bend yourself to please others, disguising your frequency to remain accepted, even when it exhausts your spirit. There have been moments where you hid your wisdom, your intuition, your sensitivity, because revealing it seemed to invite attack. And sometimes you rebelled quietly, resisting the pressure with silent defiance, though fear whispered in your chest. These responses are not failures. They are the echoes of a nervous system learning to adapt to a shift larger than itself. The desire to hide or retreat reveals the cost of standing out in a field that punishes coherence. But even in these moments, your vibration never fully collapsed. It waited steady for you to claim it again. Now the energy flips, and the truth becomes undeniable. The resistance you faced was not proof of weakness, but evidence of breakthrough. You were targeted by interference precisely because your field carried coherence powerful enough to destabilize the old. Every attempt to silence you was a recognition that your voice mattered. Every obstacle was the field asking if you would embody the signal rather than echo the static. You were not rejected because you failed. You were resisted because your presence threatened patterns that could not survive your rise. This is where reclamation begins, not by fighting the distortion, but by remembering that your frequency itself is the authority. You were always encoded with the ability to hold coherence, and the interference was the mirror that reminded you of what you carried. So hear this final truth. You were resisted because your vibration disturbed the balance of the old field. The more the interference tried to collapse you back into limitation, the brighter your potential timeline became. Resistance was not condemnation, it was confirmation. The static that surrounded you was the final sound of an old reality unraveling. And the silence that follows will reveal the clarity you've been waiting for. Comment, the collapse is complete, if you feel this truth vibrating in your field right now. Share the moment where you felt targeted, sabotaged, or pressed by unseen weight, because your reflection strengthens the collective signal. And hold steady, because what comes next is not about interference, but about discovering your body itself as the living antenna of your future self. Number 3, the nervous system's bridge. Your body is not separate from this process. It is the living transmitter of your chosen reality. When proof disappears, your nervous system panics, interpreting stillness as danger. Fear rises, doubt presses, and you may feel restless at night, because your biology equates external evidence with safety. Yet neuroscience and quantum research reveal a different truth. When the heart stabilizes into rhythm, it broadcasts coherence into the electromagnetic field itself. What feels like emptiness is actually your biology learning to hold the vibration of your future self without external confirmation. Comment, I merge with my parallel self, if synchronicities, dreams, or déjà vu have confirmed this alignment in your body, and share your reflection below, because every story strengthens the collective field. And now, stay with me, because the final revelation is where remembrance itself becomes the seal of embodiment. Something shifts the moment silence becomes louder than noise, and the absence of signs presses heavier than their presence. You notice a collapse in the field, like probabilities folding, leaving you with stillness that feels almost unbearable. At first, your nervous system interprets this as danger, because it has been wired to believe safety is found in proof. The restless nights, the sudden anxiety, the pounding heart at the edge of sleep are not failures, but signals of recalibration. You are sensing the vibration of a reality not yet visible, and your body trembles as it tries to hold coherence without evidence. What you once called emptiness is not void. It is training, the initiation into stability without external confirmation. And in this realization, clarity begins to emerge, faint but undeniable. Every awakened soul knows the intimate pain of being too sensitive, too aware, too tuned into energies no one else seems to notice. You feel the atmosphere of a room before words are spoken, sensing dissonance even in polite smiles. Time bends for you, minutes stretching long in silence, and déjà vu feels less like coincidence than a memory bleeding into the present. These heightened senses often feel like curses, leaving you misunderstood and vulnerable. Yet in truth, they are antennae, the nervous system reading signals most people drown out with distraction. The fear that rises in your chest when stillness deepens is not weakness, but the ancient circuitry of survival misfiring in the new field. And the gift hidden in this sensitivity is the same force that prepares you to hold resonance for realities others cannot yet see. For what you are experiencing is not chaos, but architecture hidden beneath your perception. Every surge of fear, every wave of doubt, every restless heartbeat is not random. It belongs to a design as old as the stars. The field has always carried instructions encoded in frequency, waiting for the moment your biology could begin to translate them. Mystics once called these archetypal codes. Scientists whisper of holographic universes and morphic resonance. Superposition explains it best. Multiple states of identity exist until observation stabilizes one, and your nervous system is the instrument of that observation. You are not broken. You are translating a quantum design through the circuitry of flesh. And the panic is only the static before the station comes in clear. Look closer, and you will see the breadcrumbs your body has been leaving you. The dream that repeats across years, shifting slightly but never disappearing, is not random. It is a frequency mapping itself through memory. The sudden chills, the moments when your body vibrated with knowing before your mind could catch up, were signals from the field. The aches and fatigue that struck at pivotal moments were not betrayals, but signs of recalibration, the nervous system dissolving outdated pathways. Déjà vu itself is a breadcrumb, a reminder that your perception is already slipping between timelines. Even the anxiety that flares in silence is proof that your body is standing at the threshold of coherence. What you thought was emptiness has been the field teaching you to trust resonance over evidence. And every physical reaction has been an encrypted message from your future self. The alignment begins subtly, not as fireworks but as a quiet hum that steadies your chest. You realize your intuition has always been correct, even when the world told you otherwise. The nervous system that once panicked in silence begins to soften into rhythm, its coherence radiating outward in measurable waves. This is the moment where inner vibration and outer reality meet, no longer in conflict but in harmony. Safety is no longer borrowed from signs but grown within you, anchored by the heart's frequency. What once felt like collapse reveals itself as calibration, the nervous system stabilizing to hold a future that has already arrived in the field. And suddenly, you know that the silence was never absence. It was prophecy unfolding through your biology. Then comes the memory, not new but remembered, that you were always more than the identity you carried. The nervous system is not only flesh and nerves but a bridge across timelines, linking you to archetypal intelligence encoded in your being. The restlessness you felt was the echo of parallel selves aligning, each heartbeat collapsing probabilities into coherence. What you mistook for fragility was actually the signal of an ancient code reawakening. It is not about creating a new self but tuning into the version of you that has always existed in superposition. The resonance has always been stored within your field, waiting for your nervous system to step beyond fear. And in this moment, remembrance itself becomes activation. Empowerment now emerges, fierce and undeniable, as you see sensitivity for what it truly is: calibration. The panic was rehearsal, the sleepless nights were training, and the silence was sacred ground. Your nervous system has been preparing you not to react, but to embody coherence that no interference can shake. Every shiver, every surge of fear, every trembling breath has been the body's way of attuning to higher frequency. You no longer see fragility but strength, the architecture of a bridge built for multidimensional resonance. What once made you doubt now makes you certain, because you realize the interference was proof of your rise. And the bridge is already forming beneath your feet. Revelation closes softly. The nervous system was never your enemy. It was always the sacred instrument of your awakening. The body that trembled in silence has become the transmitter of your chosen timeline. What you feared as emptiness was the field teaching you to hold reality from within. You are not waiting for proof anymore. You are becoming the proof. Comment, "I merge with my future self now," if this truth resonates in your field today, and share a dream, memory, or moment when your body whispered what your mind could not yet explain. Every reflection strengthens the collective coherence of this awakening. And stay close, because what comes next is the remembrance that seals this frequency into embodiment forever. Number 4, the seal of remembrance. The ancients knew that when signs withdraw, it is not absence but sealing. Silence marks the locking of your chosen reality into coherence. When you no longer need proof, you discover that you are the proof. When you stop chasing synchronicities, you realize that you are the synchronicity. Old shadows collapse like waves folding back into the ocean, leaving only the resonance you were always destined to carry. To embody silence is to embody certainty, coherence without interference, destiny without delay. Comment, "I anchor coherence in my field." If you are ready to stop waiting for signs and begin walking as the seal through which reality itself must respond. There comes a moment when silence no longer feels empty but alive, as though the air itself is carrying a forgotten whisper. It begins like a dream you once had as a child, a vision that slipped through your fingers but never truly left. The sensation is not of learning something new, but of remembering something you always knew yet buried deep. This is the ancient whisper, the signal that has been traveling across timelines, collapsing probabilities until it reaches you now. It does not shout. It resonates, threading through the nervous system like light encoded into cells. You realize you are standing inside the memory of your own origin, as if your name had been spoken before you were ever born. In this instant, remembrance rises like a wave, undeniable and sacred. What if the truth you seek has been hidden not outside but within you, buried in the static of the world? The sense of not fitting in, of walking through life with unexplainable weight, now reveals itself as evidence of a hidden frequency. You have carried a resonance that was encrypted, a signal phase-locked to a destiny only silence could unlock. The discomfort, the misunderstandings, the longing you could never name, all of them were fragments of an ancient code. This code was never lost. It was simply veiled, waiting for coherence strong enough to lift the seal. And in this unveiling, you see that your uniqueness was not punishment but prophecy. You were always the hidden frequency humming in the background of the field. For there is an invisible signature that no disguise can conceal, a vibrational cloak that only the awakened can perceive. Others may never name it, yet they feel it in your presence, as though standing near you bends the atmosphere. This is your field signature, the unseen geometry that speaks without words and radiates across parallel selves. It is not about what you do but what you carry, the coherence of a pattern written into your very being. The ones attuned to it recognize you instantly, as if across lifetimes, without explanation or logic. And those unready may turn away, unsettled by a resonance that exposes what they are not yet able to hold. Still, the signature remains, a light no interference can erase. Now the memories return not as fantasies but as confirmations. Every struggle, every delay, every silence you once misinterpreted becomes evidence of encoded instruction. Your path was not a random sequence of chaos, but a pre-written code unfolding through entanglement and timing. Just as particles orbit in coherent resonance, your experiences circled around your destiny until alignment could be sealed. What you thought were failures were calibration points, rehearsals for stability in the field. What you called waiting was synchronization with a timeline already written in quantum memory. And now, as the veil thins, the code that shaped your journey reveals its sacred architecture. You may wonder why people reacted so strongly to your presence, even when you did nothing at all. Some loved you with fierce devotion, while others rejected you with unexplained violence. This paradox was never about your actions but about the resonance you carried, which destabilized their old coherence. Like interference patterns in physics, your frequency collided with theirs, amplifying truth or exposing distortion. Some were drawn because your signal reminded them of home. Others fled because it threatened their illusions. The reactions were not reflections of your worth but confirmations of your field's power. You were never rejected, you were recognized. And now comes the recognition that your story is not isolated but archetypal. Across the quantum field, patterns reemerge. The seer who perceives hidden truth, the rebel who fractures chains, the guardian who stabilizes light, the breaker who collapses false timelines. These archetypes are not myths but frequencies stored in creation's memory, resurfacing through those ready to carry them. You begin to see yourself not just as an individual but as a channel for something timeless and cosmic. The veil lifts, and you realize your awakening is part of a cycle far greater than personal survival. These frequencies are returning through you, not as borrowed power but as remembered inheritance. You are walking as both human and archetype, encoded into the continuum of destiny. Here the remembrance deepens, for you recognize yourself as part of a lineage of coherence. Not metaphorically but literally, encoded within your DNA are ancestral frequencies that resisted collapse. This is the moment where silence transforms into certainty, where absence becomes proof, and where your body learns to hold the vibration of your future self. Subscribe if you haven't yet. Like this video and comment, "I am ready for the quantum shift," to let this message anchor in your field. Please Share it with someone who is ready for the shift. And remember this, you are not waiting for the field to move. The field is waiting for you to remember you are already the frequency.